The Wheel of Time. You've heard of it. Recently, this series has taken the world by storm, despite the first book being written 30 years ago, thanks in large part to content creators like The Dusty Wheel and Daniel Green, but mostly due to the upcoming Amazon Prime show of the same name. I have seen very few shows, especially in the fantasy genre, nail the marketing as well as The Wheel of Time. In the lead up to the show's release this week, it has been consistently drip-feeding its fanbase trailers,
we protect the people we love,
posters, and clips to build towards the already tremendous hype. But rooted in the glamour of the epic fantasy's silver screen debut is a series 14 books long, totaling more than 4 million words, written by the late great Robert Jordan. After much encouragement, I decided to finally dive in and see if the books are as good as people say, or if they're simply defended by people with a sense of fanatical nostalgia.
And the one power is what turns the wheel of time, the power that drives the universe.
Oh yeah! What's shaking? My name's Cam, welcome back to another video. I make videos every week on fantasy and horror books, doing deep dives, reviews, discussions, so if that's your kind of thing, I would love it if you stuck around. Not too long ago at all, I actually said that I didn't intend on reading The Wheel of Time, at least anytime soon, entirely due to how incredibly intimidating this series is. It is a truly huge series, so the prospect of getting started felt a lot like agreeing to jump into a cage fight with a Bundy rum enthusiast.
Come on then, show me what you got, you son of a...
With all the incredible marketing for this show though, and various people asking me to do a video on the series, I finally thought, why not? As of right now, I can finally say I have read the first book in the Wheel of Time series, The Eye of the World. I know. Me and every other fantasy booktuber on the platform, I know. Pat on the back. Like I normally do, I would like to take a deeper dive into the characters, the themes, and the world of this book. But I do have to ask you to keep something in mind. This is a very big series, and a lot of you might have already read the whole thing or most of it. I have only read book 1, so if anything I say is contradicted by the other books, it is because I haven't read them yet. Please see that I'm approaching this from the ground floor as a new fan, and try not to spoil anything for me or other people who might be watching in the comments. As always though, let's start with a spoiler-free recap of The Eye of the World so that we can better understand the finer points. The Eye of the World introduces us to the inhabitants of a small country town, Edmondsfield, within the two lakes. Matt, Perrin, Egwene, Nynaeve, and arguably the story's central interest, Rand L. Thor. The people in this area live pretty peaceful lives, far removed from the wars and conflicts of the larger world. This all collapses when Edmondsfield is visited by a myriad of strangers, namely the mysterious Moraine and her pseudo-bodyguard, Lan, as well as the travelling entertainer and crowd favourite, Tom. Everyone's excited about these newcomers, but with their arrival comes a larger danger. Homes in Edmondsfield are attacked by horned abominations called Trollocs, and this is the catalyst that drives our group into their adventure. The youngsters of this village find out that it was they that the beasts were searching for, and it's with this that they set out with Moraine and Lan for answers, and also to keep danger as far from their home and their families as possible. During the course of the book, our group travels across many interesting locations, fleeing the danger at their heels. Danger like the Trollocs, the even more terrifying Myrdril, eyeless warriors relentlessly on the hunt, and various allies of the evil called Dark Friends. Through the course of the story, our heroes struggle with who they can trust and where they can find safety, as an entity known as the Dark One comes closer by the day. We meet many more interesting characters along the way, like the Ogier Loyal, who I have to say is already a personal favourite of mine. I've always very quickly gotten attached to the friendly giant trope when it comes to fantasy, so meeting the character Loyal was amazing. All the while seeing our former country bumpkins transform into drastically different versions of the simple people they once were, for better or worse. That is as simple a description as you'll probably ever get for the Eye of the World, but let's take an even closer look, starting with the mysterious and powerful Moraine. Moraine is part of a compelling group of women named the Aes Sedai, humans who have the ability to channel the One Power, a source of magic that can take many different forms. An interesting angle within the story of the Wheel of Time is how the Aes Sedai are treated by common folk. Unlike most beloved wizards and warlocks within fantasy, who are often revered and respected, the Aes Sedai are largely feared or even hated and blamed for the increasing dark happenings across their lands. See, a long time ago there were both male and female channelers, but the men were corrupted by the influence of the Dark One, and ultimately this led to a cataclysmic event known as the Breaking of the World. Since then, there haven't been many men who could use the One Power, and if they did, they would be gentled by the women Aes Sedai to avoid further catastrophe. This is a huge plot point in the story. There's a really popular fantasy story structure that I'm sure you've heard of. It's called Joseph Campbell's Hero's Journey. It lays out in a very clear and, ironically, circular pattern the regular story beats that you'll find in almost all popular fantasy and adventure stories. The first two stops on the hero's journey are Call to Adventure and Supernatural Aid, and this is where Moraine immediately shows her importance to the greater narrative. I have to admit that at a lot of points Moraine and her magic did feel a bit like a catch-all way of solving problems or answering an immediate question. If there was something dangerous happening, her magic could almost always shape itself however it needed to solve that problem. If there was a question that needed answering, she very likely had the answer. Or if it was at a point in the story where we as the reader shouldn't know that answer yet, she would have a pretty convenient reason to not share that information with us. At a lot of points, her abilities and her knowledge did kind of border on being a deus ex machina, but luckily it never took me too much out of the story. You may be wondering about the name of the series, The Wheel of Time, because in the first book, Eye of the World, they will constantly refer to the wheel as if it's an actual physical entity, rather than an expression for the passage of time. It would be like us talking about Father Time as if he's an actual guy, rather than an abstract concept.
The wheel turns as the wheel wills.
Is a very common expression in the book, which is pretty similar to us saying, it is what it is, what's done is done. Well, it turns out the wheel itself is actually quite literal, a large 7-spoked wheel in fact, containing the different ages of the universe. The wheel turns and weaves a pattern, which we in the real world would probably call destiny or fate. What has happened and what is to come. Every person is connected to the wheel by threads, and some have a greater impact on this pattern than others. Some have no impact at all. It is of course much more complicated than that, but what is important is that the wheel is powered by the same source that generates the One Power, which gives the abilities to the Aes Sedai and others like them. The true brilliance of this concept is in how literally circular it is. The concept of time being woven by a literal wheel lays the groundwork for themes of repetition and the desire to break free from what has happened before dictating what will happen next. In fact, a certain white-haired and overly affectionate aunt from a different fantasy franchise said it quite well.
It's a beautiful dream. Stopping the wheel. You're not the first person who's ever dreamt it.
I'm not going to stop the wheel. I'm going to break the wheel.
The idea of time being circular also pays reference to a lot of spiritualities that still exist today, like the Buddhist idea of reincarnation and the wheel of life, or perhaps more accurately, Hinduism's samsara. Hear what Robert Jordan himself had to say about it.
It is from Hindu mythology that time is a wheel, but actually most Eastern cultures believed that time was circular. The Greeks gave us the great gift of believing that time was linear. And that's a great gift because if time is circular, if everything repeats in cycles, then change is impossible. No matter what you do, it's always going to come back to what is here. But if time is linear, then change is possible. But I wanted the circularity because I wanted, again, to go into the changes by distance. So the myths and legends and a few of the stories that these people tell, well, some of them are based on our own current events, on the present. What they are doing is based on our myths and legends.
You've probably heard me complain more than enough by now about prophecies in storytelling, but something I found with The Wheel of Time, at least so far, is how often Robert Jordan will directly try to combat these tropes. Much like the idea of stopping the wheel, prophecies in the story are approached more like complex omens, destinies as inevitable as the turning of the wheel, but destinies that the heroes must fight against rather than just embrace. For all of the familiar tropes that the Eye of the World has, it's not as simple as farm boy must be the chosen one and save the world. Without any spoilers, the greater question is more appropriately, which cost is greater? Which is the lesser of these evils? Should you accept a prophecy that is so densely written in blood? I was really truly worried that this book would fail to meet my expectations, because I'm sure you know just as well as I do that it has been bro-hyped more than Dogecoin at this point, and I am very happy to say that reading The Eye of the World managed to not only fill me with the same nostalgia as adventuring through Middle-earth for the first time, but it also gave me an entirely new and fresh experience with an epic quest story. For the most part, these aren't heroes selflessly going towards danger to save the day. They're just young, terrified, and traumatized people trying to find safety and make sense of a world they never understood. A world that is not just changing around them, but because of them. I have never seen such a large cast of characters in a fantasy story handled so well. There's almost too many characters to even list, which normally I would hate. But for once, I felt like I understood each and every single one of them because their personalities and their dialogue was so distinct. The way they talked and the motivations for their actions made sense. I've only just finished book 1, but I am already starting to understand why so many people have fallen in love with this world. I'm excited for the show and I'm excited to read on, so a big thank you to all of you that peer pressured me into finally starting this series. Like I said, I make videos every single week on fantasy and horror books, doing deep dives, reviews, and discussions, so I would love it if I could see you in the next one. As always, thanks for watching, especially for watching through the whole video. You truly are my favorite. But for now, that's it, so see you next time. Catch ya.